Our final speaker of the first part of today's conference is Maarten Haijer, Secretary General of the European Gaming and Betting Association, or EGBA for short. Maarten will tell us more, I think, about the Spanish market in a wider European context, and what international operators can do to make gambling safer and more responsible. Maarten, please come to the stage and share your thoughts with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, first of all, thank you very much, Willem, for organizing the event. As usual, very well organized. I'll talk a bit about the European perspective on regulation, and then indeed on a more aggregate level, what EGBA or the EGBA members do in terms of safer gambling. I think, as Peter already explained, it's an important topic for us as well as a whole association. And I'll give you the more aggregate level of what Peter just explained, what Entain does. So, who are we? For those that don't know us yet, we're a Brussels-based trade association. We have 6 multi-licensed operators. As you can see, in 21 European countries, they hold together 225 online licenses. So it's a complicated, fragmented market. And that is also something that we, from our European perspective, are keenly aware of. And we try to facilitate that to become easier for our members to deal with. Almost 30 million customers, all the members together, and about a third of the total EU and UK online markets. So when I show you figures, most of those figures are the EU 27 plus the UK, because we obviously think the UK will move back again sooner or later into... Yes, Peter. It will happen. And what we also do is we work closely together with online associations, including J Digital, where we cooperate closely to discussions, and also to try to provide information input for them as well. So as I said, quickly, licensing in Europe. This is about Spain, but I think it's good to also see the European perspective of it all. This is the situation in 2021. All the green parts are where we have multi-licensing, where the model is competition. And so we've tried and tested in Europe all the different models like prohibitions, no regulation, online monopolies. But as you see, the dominant model has become competition, so multi-licensing. We have one more online monopoly left, that's Finland. But we expect Finland to change its regulation within the next 2 to 3 years as well. Even the online monopoly there, Veikkaus, has said that they prefer to be in a competitive environment and not in a monopoly environment, because then they can better address especially the challenges of the black market. I know that the black market is not always a popular topic for regulators, but only in the island of Curaçao, I think there are 5,000, and they don't even know how many, but around 5,000 online or licensed Curaçao licensed operators. And so there are a lot of websites that are out there that are not established in the EU. So the black market is a real issue. And it's also the reason why the Finnish monopoly prefers to go in the competitive environment, because they're leaking about 50% of the market. What we also know is that we have now a second wave of regulation. That's also what we see in Spain, where the licensing situation has been addressed. But now there are a more visible sector and there's a more challenging environment. And as a result, we see in a lot of jurisdictions discussions around advertising, around player safety, and so on and so forth. And I think there the real challenge is to ensure that safety is guaranteed for those players, but at the same time that the model remains attractive and functioning. I think that's really the challenge where we're at in terms of the regulation. And that's something that is a difficult discussion because, for instance, we see a lot of advertising bans pop up. And I think an advertising ban is a very good example of something that is a political topic and that politicians then react to because it's annoying to see too much advertising. But it's not based on facts and it's not based on evidence. And it will be counterproductive because advertising also serves to inform the customer where do you need to go to and what is the regulated environment. And as I think Jorge already said, one of the first advertising bans will now is being considered to be withdrawn, and that's the Italian one. So having the right regulation in place and not just a political reaction to public nuisance or public issues is really important. I think that's where the real challenge lies. Maybe one last thing about Europe and Spain compared to Europe, and that's the market. I think this is an interesting slide as well. So in the light blue is the size of the market, and in red, the dots going up to the left is the percentage of the online market of the total market. And what's really interesting to see is that the larger markets have relatively small online markets, with the obvious enormous exception of the United Kingdom, which is around 65% of the total market is online. But here you can see actually Spain is the smallest percentage of the online markets in Europe. So either there's potential for growth, if I can put it like that, or or it remains like this. But we expect the whole line to shift upwards with generational changes. So that's my part about regulation. Then we go to the issue of safer gambling. And I think in line also with what Peter said, and Maarten is a member of EGBA, but all our members have a similar approach now to safer gambling, and that is the more personalized approach rather than the generic approach. So one size fits all approach does not work, and we need to go towards a more personalized approach where we look at the individual customer and what he or she does. And if that remains within the safety zone, that's all good. But as soon as they move into more risky behavior, based on their individual behavior, they need to be nudged in the right direction. I think that's the common shared objective of EGBA members. That is where we need to go to now. We are collecting now data as EGBA from our members, and this is one of the data sets that we have about their sustainability and about their more individualized approach to safer gambling. This is the number of messages, safer gambling messages sent out in 2020 and 2021. You see a huge jump, the yellow one, from 17 million messages to 38 million messages per year, informing them of safer gambling and how to keep safe whilst gambling. And in green, you see a huge increase as well, and those are the individualized, non-generic messages. So that's really done in response to the behavior as you as an individual. So a huge upsurge in individual messages that are aimed and geared towards your personal behavior. One more around this as well. And this is the number of customers that received a message. So again, not only did the messages go up, but also the number of individuals that have been identified as potentially going to at risk or even worse behavior, if I can put it like that, has increased significantly as well. We're now collecting data for 2022. We are hoping to publish that data in our new sustainability report in June of this year, hopefully before the summer, otherwise just after. But we think that there will be interesting new figures there as well. In addition to what we, maybe to go back, can I go back? Yep. Maybe also what's interesting to know is that for this year, for the first time, we're measuring, or we get data from our members about the effectiveness of their intervention. So it's good to have an intervention, but it's even better than to have a response from the customer to that intervention. We will have data around that as well, and the data, the benchmark that we will use, because we need to find a common benchmark, is whether the people that have been intervened with have less losses over the next 3 months. And there you will find data in a new report that will explain, around that metric, whether people have responded to the individual approach or not. Next one, it's the use of safer gambling tools. So the 50% is has gone down slightly. It will go up this year, that's what I can tell you already. Partly because new jurisdictions opened up, partly also because our membership changed. But this year it will increase again. But the green one, the 50%, is mandatory and voluntary tools use, because certain jurisdictions you are required to have a mandatory tool. And the yellow one is the number of people that have a voluntary use of a tool. But that will increase this year as well. And this one, last but not least, because as I like to say a lot, providing online gambling services or selling gambling products is not the same as selling books. And you need to acknowledge that as an operator. You need to have the systems in place, but you also need to have people that are in your company that are fully aware. And I think Peter explained that bonuses are across the whole sector, across the whole company, linked to safer gambling. Here you see 80% of all employees of EGBA members get a safer gambling training as well. And just to make them aware that regardless whether you're in contact with consumers or not, at least you're aware that the products that you sell, that there is a safer gambling side to as well. So it's raising awareness amongst the operators is very important. I think so just to get back, so there's raising of awareness, and then the last bit that I just wanted to introduce you to is the markers of harm, or markers of, what was it again? Protection, as Antain likes to call them. There is no common agreed set of markers of harm. There are different models around. And as I said, our members have licenses in 21 jurisdictions in Europe. And they are having to deal with safer gambling issues in all those jurisdictions. And for that reason, and to have a common discussion around what markers of harm are, we made a proposal and we've gone to SEN, so there's a European Standardization Committee, where we said it would be good to have a European standard around markers of harm. So what are the markers of harm that operators need to take into account when they look at the individual's behavior, whether they go to different stages of risky or not risky behavior. And that is a process that can then be the set of standards that can be used across jurisdictions. So that's something that would help operators, but it also allows the regulator to sit at the table and to discuss with experts across Europe. So it's a cross-European initiative. And it will lead to a set of common standards. So there are the changes of mark in gambling behavior. We want to have a trustworthy, reliable set of markers. So it's an industry initiative, but it's not decided by us. It's decided by the national standardization bodies. It will not be a medical assessment of what harm is. That's outside of the scope. It will not impact directly what gambling operators need to do in response to what they pick up in the marks of harm. And it's important to know also for the regulator, they're not legally binding unless they're referenced to in national law or in European law. So you see, for instance, CER mark in your sunglasses. They are compulsory because somewhere in European law it says you need to have sunglasses with a CE mark. And if that's not there, then they're not legally binding. But we hope and we expect by having this process of probably a year and a half sitting together at the table and discussing with each other, exchanging information, coming to common definitions, that it will lead to a good set of marks of harm that also the authorities can buy into, and whether they then will pick it up in law or not. But that also for them leads to a trustworthy set of markers of harm that have a common understanding and acceptance across the sector and the industry. I think in view of the time, I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, please do so.
Any questions from the room for Maarten? I think we've time for one quick question. If nobody has a question, I have a quick question for you, Maarten. How do you think, Maarten, the Spanish market stands out? What has the Spanish government and regulator got exactly right?
I think they are looking at safer gambling from a very specific point of view. I think they're less geared towards generic one-size-fits-all. I think it's good that they have a more aware approach of safer gambling based on people's behavior. I think that's the part that they have gotten right. If I can also say one thing that might be, I have to add something. I think we need to be very careful in terms of where we go with the spending limits. I understand the objectives, but there I think we seem to go away from the more individualized approach to a more generic approach, not based on what people can actually spend or whether people are in danger of getting harmed, but it's more of a generic measure which we think is less geared towards safer gambling, but more geared to maybe a more loss limiting while people might still be able to spend them approach. So I think there, although I know it's not ready yet and is being considered, I think that's the one critical note I would have on the proposed plans.
Thank you very much. Maarten, we'll leave it at this. Thank you very much.